I couldn't watch.
Really?
I don't scare easy. I'm not very squeamish. That was not for me.
And the midwife was trying to stay calm, and I just looked Jim dead in the eye, grabbed his hand, and I went, "This is where I die."
Oh, God.
Yeah. If one more person tells my wife to have a ginger biscuit, I'm going to go insane.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Happy Mum, Happy Baby, the podcast. Today's guests, there are two of them. They're a married couple. They are content creatives, creative types, I would say, because they've got many strings to their bow. They are also mum and dad to little children, 2.5-year-old Margot, an 8-month-old Jessie, so a girl and a boy. It is Jim and Sarah Chapman.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules and crazy.
Quite nice to have 5 minutes away from the children.
Only too happy to be out of the house, trust me.
I always feel like a podcast with a couple as well. You get to actually sit down and talk about things, whereas usually it's very much me and Tom. We don't talk about anything actually, unless we're forced to sit down in this sort of situation.
You don't have time,
No.
right? You finally finish, the kids are down. You go, right, okay, let's not actually talk to each other. Let's put a screen on, watch a show, and
scroll on another screen at the same time.
Yeah, but don't because you just touched out, you've communicated out. You know, the last thing you want. And actually, Sarah goes to bed before me.
But what time do you go to bed?
Oh, I love going to bed early. Sometimes, like 9 is my usual time, but sometimes I go earlier just to like wind down. I'll read a book and I'll just sit by myself.
I really like
And Jim
this.
quite likes to be
I'm
by
watching
himself
the
as
clock
well.
and I go, ooh, it's about 9 o'clock, Sarah. Do you think
Are you
should,
literally sending her off to bed so you get some
because
proper
then it's my
relax
time. I put the show on I want to watch.
Okay.
And I'll sit and I'll draw or I'll have my time. And I'll often, like last night I went to bed at like midnight.
Okay.
It's the only time of day I get where I'm not working, I'm not parenting,
Yeah.
I'm not partnering. I'm just existing. Really tired this morning though, because that was late.
It's difficult with two little ones that are so close in age. Like ours they're little and they're very demanding because they're so young.
Yeah.
And how you get to the end of the day is everyone's different. Everyone survives different. I would never question anyone's mode of parenting, but what suits us and suits us at the end of the day is like we come together, the kids go down like 6:30, they're in bed, they both sleep, we'll have dinner together, watch a show. That's
Does
our
Jessie
time.
sleep through now as well?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's so
Yeah.
good.
Both of our kids are good sleepers, which I'm saying now, touching wood. I hope I'm not jinxed it because like they're both fairly early on learnt to sleep really
But
well.
that was important for us. So we worked on it quite hard because that was important for us to like have that time together in the evening, have our dinner, watch a show, connect, and then I'll go and have an early night, or I might, scroll, watch something on my iPad. Jim will draw, have his time, and then we start the day again. I just could not function if we were still looking after a child at like 10, 11 o'clock. I'd be a zombie.
It's tough, especially, in the early days when they're little and they just require you constantly for feeding or because they haven't worked out sleeping. Do that with a toddler as well. And there are, parents up and down the universe who have done this, but you don't realise how bloody hard it is until you're in it. You can talk about it to people who've never experienced it. Oh, okay, you're just a bit tired. But no, you don't get it.
Well, I can remember just before the third one coming along, suddenly going, how am I going to do bath time and bedtime?
Right.
Like, how do I do that?
We were yesterday or day before taking Margot somewhere. I had Margot in my arms. You were pushing Jessie in the pushchair, and you said to me, "I think I could do a third." And I said, "Yeah, but think of the situation we're currently in. I'm holding one. You're pushing the other. Where's the third? What's it floating? Like how are we doing it? So I think possibly down the line, but not for not for a while yet.
But I do think it's funny that it's only when you're in that situation that that baby's coming that you're suddenly like, well, hold on. I've got this down. Like I've worked out how to do this.
Yeah.
How am I going to
It's also
change
your
it?
mind. It's just as they start to like sleep, eat, have a good routine that you're like, I want another baby now. It's that hormone that you're like, and I had HG. I was very sick through all my both pregnancies, and even still, I'm like, I've forgotten it, and now I want another. And I keep saying to Jim, when I say that to you, just slap me. Just slap me.
The thing is, Jessie's
But
coming.
Jessie's 8 months. So
But he's coming out the other end of the really boring bit where they don't do anything.
Yeah.
Like Margot's so much fun. It's so dynamic, and parents are right when they say it gets better.
Yeah.
Because they're real characters. For the first 6 months, you forget, especially having the reference of the first.
Yeah.
When the second comes along, oh my God, you don't do anything. All you do is cry and need feeding.
And Jessie did cry a lot. Jessie was very unwell.
He was unwell.
He was really, really poorly.
Yeah.
Which also is nuts that we're there like, well, I say me, they're going, maybe a third. And Jim's there like, the last child was so sick. He was in hospital. And I'm like, I know, just another one,
But
go on.
it feels like it's never ending when you're in it.
Yeah.
But then, obviously...
It's only been 8 months of our lives. I mean, you were pregnant for longer than he's existed outside of you, right?
Yeah.
But it feels like it has been so long because he was really ill for the first, 6 months, you think? Where
probably.
couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't keep anything down, was basically refluxy, but it ended up it wasn't reflux. It was a simple matter of probiotics is what he needed. But all the symptoms displayed as reflux. He was on all the medicine, but they weren't touching the side, so he wasn't getting any better. He was losing weight. He was just a miserable little thing, and it wasn't his fault, but it's so difficult. And then you've got a little gorgeous 2.5-year-old running around like licking the plug sockets and causing mischief, and you're just torn. And actually now Jesse, now we've sort of sorted his tummy out. He's so delightful. And it's come at just that time where he's starting to crawl, and you know, it's like it's really good fun parenting now. But for that first chunk of a newborn is difficult.
Well, you're one of 4.
Yeah.
Sarah, how many siblings do you have? Do you have any siblings?
I have 2 older half siblings and a full brother, so I'm also one of 4.
Yeah, so you're from big families.
Yeah. But it's also I'm a twin.
Yes.
And I've got 2 big sisters, and my mum did it all on her own. My dad wasn't around, so I have experienced how hard it can be. My mum worked; she looked after twins. Plus, Sam is 10 years older than me. Nick's 7 years older than me. So we had such different needs, and then me and John had the same needs, but at the same time. It's a lot. So I've seen how taxing it can be. I mean, we had nothing. We were loved, so I'm not complaining about my childhood, but I can see how taxing it could be. And having just 2 in the lifestyle that I currently have, I'm concerned about providing. But I think my childhood, because it's so different from Sarah's, has, like, sometimes we discuss things as parents. I'm like, oh my God, the things that you did. That
We
I
had
did.
literally polar opposites.
But that's really good, I think, because we come together, and I'm really hopeful that the experience we can give Margot and Jesse is more akin to yours than mine. Not just in terms of, a broken home and finances and everything, but time and resources. And my mum had no resources left because she was doing it for 4 and working to earn money. Whereas your parents were a couple. Dad earned good money.
But my dad wasn't around until...
precisely.
So my dad retired really early.
Right.
And he retired in like his 40s. But up until then, I think... I have not many memories of my dad being around in my childhood, maybe until like 9 or 10, because he would get up really early, commute into London, live in London for 4 or 5 days, and then come back home. Then he worked in Bristol, and it was the same thing, rinse and repeat. And I just never saw him. And even there were holidays, and I remember being a child and being worried, thinking, is Daddy going to get taken? Because he'd get a phone call that said, I need you in Paris. By midnight, we're sending a car. They'll be there in an hour. And he would say, give me the time back. And he'd be, we'll pay you more. And he's like, but my kids go back to school. I don't care about the money. I want to be with my kids. So he retired early and then wouldn't leave me alone. Literally would not leave us alone.
So when it comes to your childhoods and then thinking about your future, did you always know that you wanted a family of your own?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Go on.
It's like our second date. We spoke about it.
Just to clarify, this does sound mental, but it was a really casual conversation. Like, it does sound like we were like planning our future.
Also, when you meet people when you're like, you get to a certain age,
but a
it's
second
like,
date is crazy.
we always know if you're in or not.
So for context, Jim had come out of a long-term marriage, and I had been also just come out of a long-term relationship, and both of us were like not looking for anything serious. We're like, we're just going to go on a date. I remember I turned up to our date in like gym wear. I think I was still sweaty from the gym. It's so gross. And I remember talking to my friend on the way there saying, I just don't really care. Like, I just need to get out. Like, I'm feeling a bit down on myself. I've had some bad relationships back to back. And then we met and we started getting on. And the second date, we're chatting about life and saying, like, what do you think kind of, like, do you want in the future? And Jim had said, I think, I just really, really want to be a dad. I think that's all I ever want in my life. And I thought to myself, that's me. All I've ever wanted is to be a mum. And I remember calling my friend, same friend that I'd called and said, I don't care. I was like, a bit embarrassed. I kind of wore the gym wear now because I really, really, like, we're the same. And I think from quite early doors, that was what...
Yeah, we knew it was... No, I say we knew it was going to be a thing. Independently, we knew.
Yeah.
Like, I've wanted to be a dad for a long time. I've come from a big family. There are loads of kids in my family. Same for you. And I think then we had a conversation. It wasn't quite as heavy as what do you need out of this? It was just, I think the conversation went something along the lines of, you'd asked me, and I said, yeah, I think there'll be the making of me, and I can't wait one day. And then I saw a little twinkle in your eye. Oh my God, same here. But then we didn't talk about it anymore.
Right.
Obviously, then we had the pandemic and everything, and we were talking about having kids.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, let's not yet. Let's go travel the world and explore and do coupley things for a while. Then obviously travel was restricted, and we were discussing it, and I said, well, we can't control what the world's doing, but we can control what we do within our own life. So we started trying and basically immediately got pregnant.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's happened quick, like we've only been together for 5 and a bit years.
I can't remember. 5 years, I think.
5
Coming
years.
up to 5 years.
Yeah. And we've got 2 kids already.
Yeah.
We've had 2 houses.
Yeah.
Really tired.
Sarah, talk to me about discovering you were pregnant. Like, were there symptoms?
The second time around, I knew
Okay.
what Jim wants to say, but he won't because people will say he's mean. But he's not. What Jim wanted to say was he knew I was pregnant before I did because I was really, really evil.
Okay.
He came home and I had taken a test and I wasn't sure, like we had said for our second, we'd said we wanted to try and have 2 quite close in age.
Right.
And we had kind of said, we're not really being careful, we might get pregnant. And I was like, it'll be fine. And within about 2 weeks, I was pregnant. It happened really fast with Jessie. And because it happened so fast, I think I was a little bit nervous of what Jim would say because I thought, oh gosh, like we discussed it, but is he ready? And when I said, I was like, oh God, okay, Jim, I'm pregnant. And he just looked at me and was like, yeah, I knew you were being such a bitch.
I think I said to you, can you do me a favour and take a pregnancy test? Because I have been on eggshells for 3 weeks. He did, came downstairs with it, and I was like, that figures. That makes sense.
But with Margot, it was a bit different. With Margot, because that was quite an active, let's try and have a baby.
Yeah.
So I actually found out I was pregnant on Jim's birthday.
Oh.
And I had taken a test 2 days before, but it was quite early, and I thought that it was negative. And I'd put it in the bin in our bathroom, and I was brushing my teeth on the morning of Jim's birthday, a day or 2 later. And I looked and I thought, that's now come up. There's a line there. And I looked and I realised, and I took another one. And in my head, I look back now and think, I wish I'd done it in a fun way because it was his birthday, but I was so excited. I literally just ran down the stairs.
There's also
and I went,
that. Yeah, you can't. I think you see things on Instagram or whatever, and you're like, oh, isn't that lovely how they told it?
Right.
Gorgeous.
how do they hold it in?
But yeah,
I was so
that
excited.
feeling that comes over you when you see those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I remember saying, well, let's not tell anybody yet because it's so early days. That was one of those early tests too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I was like, so early days, anything can happen. Let's not tell anybody. And then Sarah's already dialing her mum.
Yeah, I think I told my mum literally within about a minute of telling Jim.
Oh.
Yeah.
And the pregnancy wasn't great.
No, so I had hyperemesis with both children, although with Jessie it really wasn't that bad. I don't know if that was because he's a boy or if it was just because I got ahead of it, but with Margot it was really, really bad. My midwife said I probably should have been hospitalised, but it was COVID. And it was at that point in COVID, if you remember, all the ambulances were lining up outside the hospitals, they didn't have any beds.
Yeah.
And I called my midwife and I said, I can't keep anything down. Mine wasn't so much sickness, it was nausea. And that's also with hyperemesis, something that's not massively, they are getting better at it. But at the time, it was like, well, if you're not being sick X amount of times a day, you don't have hyperemesis. And I actually got in touch with this really lovely charity called Pregnancy Sickness Support that said, no, you are, because your nausea is so bad. I could smell from we were in a 3-story flat. I could smell 3 floors up.
Yeah, I was making
And
it
I
up,
would
mate. She was like, close the fridge. And I was like, how do you know?
Yeah, I could. And I could smell everything and it would make me gag. I would look at food. I probably didn't eat a square meal for the first 6 to 8 weeks.
It was worrying, actually,
And
even for me, who wasn't actually directly experiencing it. It was really
And I
hard.
lost a lot of weight. And I'm quite slim to start off with, so I lost a lot and was quite underweight. And I called my midwife and she said, I don't want you to come in because it's not massively safe. She was like, I could put you on a drip. She's like, if you're not vomiting, then hopefully we just need to try and get something down you because where you're lucky is you're not vomiting.
Yeah.
So I was on just sipping water and anything that I could. I used to make ice lollies with as much nutrients as I could, and I just lick them all day trying to get anything
Something
in. And it was...
Do you remember everybody suggesting you have ginger biscuits?
Oh, God.
Everybody. I was like, if one more person tells my wife to have a ginger biscuit, I'm going to go insane.
Yeah. And then the only thing that helped was medication. I was medicated. And then during my labour with Margot, the sickness really ramped up. I was on like 4 different types of anti-sicknesses. I was on a drip with anti-sickness.
Did it stay with you the whole time then?
She came out and they're doing skin to skin and she was on me for about 10 seconds and I just, and it's when you can't quite talk because the sick's coming up and I went, I'm going to be sick. And I threw this 10-second-old baby at whoever was and just kind of went like that at whoever was next to me and went, take the baby. And I just vomited everywhere. I don't think I held her for like the first hour that she was born.
You were vomiting throughout labour. So this is a weird quirk of Sarah's. And when we first met, I thought that she might be have issues because her reaction to any discomfort, vomiting. Always.
Isn't it interesting that your body does that?
Sarah will
just
get a
vomit
cold
at everything.
and she'll vomit. And at first, when we first met, I was like, okay. But as obviously I've got to know her and realise what I've discovered is that she'll stub her toe and just puke. It's
very
how your body responds to pain and to trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but interesting then that with the hyperemesis that it wasn't coming out.
It wasn't coming out. No. I was a little bit. I was still vomiting, but maybe like 2 or 3 times a day.
You were vomiting more than I would say the average pregnant woman would for that.
Yeah. So I was vomiting more than average, but it wasn't quite. They have like a scale of what they think is normal with what counts as hyperemesis, and I think I was more than average, but not enough for it to count as a vomit, which was why it took quite a long time for them to really diagnose me. And this charity were brilliant. They were like, these are the questions you need to take. They had this little form and it has different scales and it says if I'm this sick, if I'm this weight, if I'm this nauseous. And I just took it to my doctor and said, I filled this out. What do I do? And they looked and they're like, oh goodness, we need to give you some medication quick. And then when I was pregnant with Jessie, I found out I was pregnant quite close to Christmas time and I knew that things were starting to shut down, and I'd had a call saying, oh, because it's coming up to Christmas, can we move your first appointment to January? And I rang them and I said, no, I'm really sorry. I need to get drugs. And I said, I promise I'm not going to mess around. If I don't need them, I won't take them. But you can see my notes. It's quite urgent that I need to have them on me in case I need to take them. And they actually were really brilliant, that hospital. And they said, okay, that's fine. And gave me my medication actually before the sickness really kicked in, because I thought I can't survive Christmas if this suddenly kicks in and I can't get hold of.
Was there moments throughout the first pregnancy where it eased off, or was it literally when the medication started that it just...
I think from memory, it started to ease up a little bit towards in
the middle.
Third trimester, and then obviously kicked up again.
Yeah, kind of middle of second trimester, towards the end of the second trimester, start of the third trimester. I had like maybe a month that it was fine.
Also, you have this idea that, that pregnancy glow and you've got to enjoy it, and isn't it amazing what your body's doing?
Haggard.
You said
I
that,
was
though.
so haggard.
I mean, I've looked on your Instagram, you looked unbelievable, obviously. But, in terms of how you felt.
I was dangerously underweight, actually. Yeah. I was quite haggard. And it was, to other people, they'd be like, the kind of pregnancy, they go, I wish I looked like that lady, because... you literally just
all
have all bump. And you're like, oh, isn't she so lucky? But
you were grey.
I was so grey the whole time.
Do you remember saying when you're pregnant with Jessie, going, oh, I'm going to get to really glow this time?
Did you?
Yeah.
But did that not happen?
No.
More sickness.
Did you feel worried about it before you got pregnant the second time?
You almost forget. It's like how you forget labour. You just forget and you're like, it's going to be okay. And then I saw on the pregnancy test and remembered and was like, oh no.
There were a few moments that, for me, where you brought it to my attention, where you sort of said, once you realised you were pregnant, it all sort of settled in, and the joy of the knowledge, you were like, oh God, I'm going to be sick all the time again, aren't I? Like, I've never spent more time in hospital as Sarah's partner or dad to the kids than since meeting you.
But what's also funny is it became part of our life, like normality, because you have have to carry on.
Well, also by that point, you've got a toddler, or a baby. So you've got to be able to...
she has asthma, so she's had undiagnosed asthma. They've diagnosed her with a viral-induced wheeze, but she's been in emergency 4 times now. I can't remember.
She was in the hospital
on Optiflow and all
on an oxygen machine when I was 8.5 months pregnant with Jessie, and I was like trying to hop my big old pregnant body onto the bed to like hold her. I was like, this is mental.
Yeah, I put Margot in the car and drove to the nearest hospital. You stayed with your parents, but then I realised that I had your pregnancy bag in the car, and I was like, well, if Sarah goes into labour, I can't leave Margot, but I've got all of Sarah's stuff. And because of the stress of it, you started having like mental Braxton Hicks.
This is actually quite a funny story. We'd gone to stay with my mum and dad, and Margot then had this asthma attack, and we had been used to it by now, so we'd kept her at home thinking it's going to be fine, and it got to the afternoon, and my mum said, I'm sorry to like, it's your child, I don't want to interfere in how you parent. That little girl needs to go to hospital. I know you're pregnant, like Jim and I'll take her. And I'd gone up to the hospital for a bit, and it got to the evening, and Jim said, you're too heavily pregnant to stay here. You need to go home. And I started having more than Braxton Hicks. I really thought I was having the baby, and we were like an hour and a half from the hospital. I realised that Jim had my hospital bag. I went into the kitchen to say to my dad, like, can you help me? He's got Bryan Adams on as loud as possible. Like, it was a sunny day. He's got like all the windows open, Bryan Adams on. He's singing, it's the Mel C version, singing with a glass of red wine in hand, like stirring some pasta. And I was like, Dad, I'm about to have a baby, and your grandchild is on an oxygen machine, and you're just singing along to Mel C.
That is how Gary
And he was like,
crisis,
it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It was, but he was just there, and I remember thinking, like, I'm so screwed. If I have this child, this is the person in charge. This is the person that's in charge.
Yeah, you don't want Gary isn't like I would like to think that I'm pretty good in the crisis, right? And there are plenty of crises when you have children, right? So it's me that takes Marco to hospital, or but Gary's the opposite. You have a crisis at Gary, we need to act, and he's there with a glass of wine cooking lasagna.
He said to me, he was like, Sarah, I've had 4 children. I know this. With the second one, it's just like, you've got time. It's going to be okay. Babies take forever. When my younger brother was born, my dad made a full toasty, and my mum nearly gave birth in the car because he said to her, she was in labour for like 2 days with me. Right. So he said, I was really hungry last time. And he decided he wanted a toasty, but the toasty machine was like in the other room, and he's like getting a chair out, climbing up the cupboards to get the toasty machine out. It's like shouting to my mum, "Where's the butter?"
I quite like Gary's, approach in a crisis, I've got to say.
It's quite laissez-faire, which is fine if it's like a mini crisis, but if it's life and death, like an asthma attack or going into labour.
Okay.
Then again, though, I did order a Nando's. Margot's birthday is now Nando's Day.
Wow.
Because while Sarah was in hospital, kind of in like early labour, no real signs, we were just sort of waiting, and you were dilating, but nothing was really happening. Obviously no one fed me, so I was like, I'm going to order Deliveroo. So I got a Nando's.
I love that you say it like that. No one fed me.
No one
was thinking of you, Jim.
I mean, I'm a big boy, I can look after myself, but I'm not the patient, right? So I have to look after myself, and I didn't want to leave Sarah aside, so I ordered Nando's to the room, and there was this leftover chicken just while Sarah was there. I saved you the cake, though.
You did save me the cake.
Going towards your labour, did you do hypnobirthing? Was there anything between you two that you were like, okay, this is going to be the plan?
I had no plan. I think the sickness had kind of thrown me a bit. Yeah. But I said this with Jessie once I kind of did know. I just said to my midwives, keep me safe, keep them safe. Obviously, keep them safe first, then me. Do whatever you need to do. I would rather not have a C-section. I would rather have a vaginal birth. I would rather, if I can, not be medicated. I ended up needing to be medicated up to my eyeballs. But I just said, you do this.
That I would rather.
I just said to them, you do this every day. And I'm all for empowering women and pregnancies and people whose birth, they know what they want to do. But my personal feeling was, you know more than me. Mm-hmm. You delivered, what do they do, like 4 babies a day, however many days they've done it. And I just thought, this is my choice, but I'm putting control in your hands. Yeah. And that actually made me feel better to not have to think about it, to not really have a birth plan, and to just say, you wise lady know everything. You do it.
Yeah, I mean, they have more experience than you ever will, right? So I think it's really important to not, have a plan by all means, but they change so quickly. Yeah. Like with Margot, things changed because it got a little bit hairy, and in the end, you needed forceps, and it got quite risky, towards the end. And it can happen so fast that if you're really stuck to your plan.
Yeah. So after Gary singing to Bryan Adams and making his lasagna, what happened from then?
So he came back to London. This was with Jessie. We came back to London and we had 2 or 3 weeks until my due date, and I was actually induced with Jessie. So because my birth with Margot had been quite hairy, scary, and I lost a lot of blood, I needed a big blood transfusion. The one thing I had said about my birth plan to my midwife was I said, I really, really I really don't want an instrumental birth. Mm-hmm. If we can avoid it, if we can avoid the fact that I might tear again and lose blood, that would be great. And I have this midwife and she's like, okay, it's fine. She was very old and Irish. I'm not going to do her accent, but it was really calming. And she said, it's fine, don't worry. And we'd gone in and she said, we may have to induce you in like 2 weeks. And then we got a call on like Monday morning and she said, I've just been thinking about you all weekend. You're very petite. That baby's big. I want to induce you tomorrow.
Wow.
And that was
Just
it.
Popped into the hospital to have a baby.
Well, let's go back to Margot's birth then, because where were you when things started with her?
So I was actually, Margot had stopped moving, and I look back now, obviously, with the second, and I think, oh, I should have caught that weeks before, but you don't know.
Hindsight.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I just was bothered by it. So I went in to check, and it was quite late, and I was at the hospital, and they said, at this point, your due date is in 2 or 3 days' time. We think it's best to induce if you're having reduced movements. It turned out she was actually stuck, which was why I ended up needing the forceps to get her out. So I was induced a lot slower the first time. They start with a pessary and then a gel, and then I had my waters broken manually.
Oh, God, that was wild.
Talk to me about this.
I had my waters broken manually, and because I vomit, so I was at this point I was starting to vomit. My temperature was rising. I was actually quite calm, but this is, as we've discussed, how my body reacts. And they said, we need to get this baby out. And they looked and they said, you're only dilated by 1 centimetre. And I could hear the midwives chatting to each other, and they said, oh, such and such can do it. She can do it. And it was like the oldest midwife, who's obviously like the most experienced, and they get this like a long hook on like a knitting needle, and you just lie back, and
I couldn't watch.
Really?
I don't scare easy. I'm not very squeamish. That was not for me. I mean, listen. As the only man in the room, I'm aware of about this sound. But like, I'm going to just look out the window for a bit, because it's a woofed.
Yeah, that was and when I was induced with Jessie, I think I was dilated by, they did break my waters again with the same knitting needle type contraption, but with Jessie I think I was maybe 4 centimetres dilated, and the difference at having it done when there's barely a hole to get that up there. Oh my goodness.
Right. She said I'd never have broken your waters at 1 centimetre, but for whatever reason it was
a lot more I don't want to say like life or death, but it was a lot more like we have to act now with Margot. It was quite worrying, and they'd been trying to induce me for 2 days or something at that point, and they knew I was getting tired. I hadn't slept, and I think they were just like, let's get this show on the road.
Yeah.
Whereas with Jessie, it was much calmer.
And after your waters broken both times, did that feel instantly different?
It's like the relief. I always describe it to Jim as saying, like, if you've been on a long walk and you have a really heavy backpack, and when you take your backpack off and you go, whew, it's almost like you forget that backpack's been on, and that's what it was like when the water's broken. I was like, ooh. With Jessie, it was so smooth until he crowned and my contractions stopped. And the whole birth with Jessie had been really smooth. I was induced. It was all going really well. And because they knew I was a bit panicked, like my midwife kept kind of looking at the clock and she was saying, okay, Mrs. Chapman, I think this baby's going to be out in 15 minutes. Super calm. Okay, Mrs. Chapman, we've got 5 minutes. I think he's going to come. And it was really calm. It was really lovely. And then he crowned, literally the widest part he could be, head there. And my contractions stopped. And I don't know why, but they stopped. And the midwife was trying to stay calm. And I just looked Jim dead in the eye, grabbed his hand and I went, this is where I die.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
And I went, this is where I die. And Jim was like, you're fine. It's okay. And I went, no, this is... And I think it was from what had happened with Margot.
You really felt
I really thought, because of what happened with Margot, I went, this is it now. And that was the only time it brought back memories of my first labour.
Do you remember as well, so Sarah's epidural had worn off. Well, it hadn't worn off, it was a blockage.
Yeah.
And they couldn't fix the blockage in time. So really,
I did most of it without pain relief, which is quite a lot when you've been induced. I remember my midwife saying, do you want an epidural? And I said, no, it'll be fine. I want to try without. And she said, being induced is like rocket fuel for getting a baby out. You want the pain relief. And then the pain relief didn't work. And I was there thinking, I have got this. I have got this. And I was so chuffed with myself. I'd nearly delivered this baby with like barely any pain relief. I was like, oh my gosh, I am Wonder Woman. And then I felt this, like he just got stuck, and I just lost my head. And I was just grabbing.
Your head. You were in, like the look on your face, like
terror,
the most pain
yeah.
you'd ever. Yeah, it was terror, and obviously you were experiencing more pain than is bearable, because it was at that point where it's at the widest point.
Ring of fire. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and you just looked at me with fear. I'm like, this is where I die. I was like, I didn't know what to say. I'm like, well, you're not going to. I can't.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
Not a
What
doctor.
are those words of reassurance at that point?
Right.
The,
To be fair, I mean, it must have felt like an eternity for you, but it was only 5 or 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And then everything started moving again, and they just sort of pulled, and then suddenly, because after that point, the baby just sort of slides out. Right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
I do still look at my kids sometimes, and it really blows my mind that I think I literally created every cell of you, and it really like blows my mind to look.
I've
look
started
like me.
saying it to them when they really argue against something. I'm like, I made you. That arm, I made that arm. That leg, me.
If I said that
me.
to Margot, she'd go, don't care, still want daddy.
Yeah, she just really likes me.
She'll hold out sometimes, and I'll say, well, you can't have a treat then. And she'll go, okay then, just to be stubborn to me. And then she'll sit there with her dad.
She's got a real stubborn. This morning on the way to nursery, I would suggest our worst tantrum of all time so far.
Yeah, definitely.
Sometimes I can tell, like this morning, it was a cuddle job. It wasn't like right, I'm going to leave you there.
It was actually a distraction job. In the end, I sat with her really quietly and I went, can you tell me what colours you're going to see of the flowers on the walk to nursery? Do you think you're going to find a purple flower? And then it just switches her brain to think about something else. And if she's being naughty, sometimes we'll go and say, like, have a little time out, go and sit next door, and we'll stand and watch her. But she's just like trying to calm. But this wasn't that. This just needed some...
It's really interesting. The why is really interesting, I think.
I'm trying to ask her why quite a lot.
Yeah.
And it's something she's not quite... She's really bright, Margot, actually. She's very good at understanding. Like, you know, she wanted her Elsa dress last night to sleep in as well, and I said, okay, you can sleep in it, that's fine. We have to take it off first to put your pajamas on, and it goes on top. She went, okay. So she does understand things.
Yeah.
But if she's being difficult sometimes, and I'll say, why are you doing this? Because I'm trying to use a lot of like open communication with her to let her do the work, because it really helps with her language and everything. And why is the one she's not so good at the moment? I don't know if she's quite there yet, but I'll ask her, like, why are you angry? Like, why are you doing this? And she's not quite
Also,
there.
I think sometimes kids they don't know what those emotions are.
no,
They're
no.
just feeling them.
Right.
I've read some amazing books, actually. Kate Silverton has incredible books, so she's just released one for slightly older kids. But there's also The Whole Brain Child, which is fascinating, because I think we approach things from a rational brain, whereas kids, once they're in the irrational, you're asking them to connect two parts of their brain that just won't connect in that moment.
My degree's in psychology.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I did a lot of developmental.
Yeah.
So I can see the stages she goes through.
Yeah.
You're very right. Like they can't make some connections. They don't have logic.
Well, how was it when you first brought Margot home?
We first brought Margot home. Nuts that they just let you walk out of the hospital.
Yeah.
Also, you stayed in for a while because you needed blood, and because the NHS it ended up being their busiest night on record.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's why Sarah had 2 extra days where they didn't give her the blood, because they just couldn't keep up with the
Yeah,
demand.
it was a lot. And, you know, we're so thankful for the NHS, but that was a mess.
So we just suddenly you come home and you've got like a baby.
And I still needed a lot of care.
Yeah.
I needed the blood thinner injections, and I was on quite a lot of medication.
Oh, they are horrible.
Oh, yeah, I mean-
The first day, my mum had come to help us for the first 2 or 3 days, and there was a point I said, okay, it's time for my injection now. And Jim and my mum were like standing there arguing over it. No, you do it. No, you do it. And I was there like, can someone just stab me?
By the end of it, though, I was like, great.
But they were both there going, no, you do it. I don't want to do it. And it's like they were both there like shutting their eyes.
It's horrible. Yeah.
It's horrible.
But it is weird. I mean, and I think maybe this is where being a dad's slightly strange, because a mum has 9 months of feeling close to the baby that's inside them, and then it might not be quite so weird when that baby exists in the real world. But for me, I'm like, well, I've had a pregnant wife, and that's kind of the extent of it, and I've been trying to look after her and the baby, but she's been sick, and I didn't have that bond.
Yeah.
You know, I was excited, but I didn't know anything. I never felt Margot, and then suddenly I've got a baby in the car seat, and I'm walking out of the hospital going, never going to drive slower.
Yeah.
Remember that drive home? I was like, everybody okay? All got your seatbelts on. I'm crawling home. And then we're quite lucky that we both have lots of kids in our families.
Yeah.
And so we're pretty hands-on. In fact, when the health visitor comes to check on you, you were asleep and usually they want to see.
They said, "Oh, it's fine. It seems like it's all in control here. Don't worry about it."
Yeah, they popped in. They could see that I was handling things okay. They asked where Sarah was, and when she's resting, I can get her if you want to. And they were like, you know what, I think you got it under control. And they left. So it was actually for me. I was like, okay, well, look, if the health visitor doesn't even need to see Sarah, they must think I'm doing all right. And it was actually a real boost because that's only 2 days later, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It made me feel like I wasn't completely messing it up and that Margot might just survive after all. But yeah, it's mental to suddenly be a parent.
Yeah.
I think as a mum, you've got 9 months of becoming a parent. You know, as a dad, you're like suddenly, oh right, okay, that's that then.
Well, yeah, things are already changing. You know, you can't do certain things
But you still have the fear. I remember being in those 2-3 days I was in hospital, and because it was coming towards the end of COVID, Jim's visiting hours were really odd, and I used to text him and be like, visiting hours start in about 2 minutes. Please tell me you're in the lobby. Because I didn't know what to do, and I would be like, what do I do with this child? And especially because I'd lost a lot of blood, so I physically was really struggling to pick her up and even get myself to the toilet. Jim had to take me to the toilet and shower me. But it was, you're there like, I just don't know what to do with this person. And someone's just given me a human. And even now, I think I'm in charge of 2 other people.
Yeah.
And
3 if you count me.
yeah, and it blows my mind because I think I'm really close with my mum. I call my mum every day. And I still call her about things and I'll say, Mum, I spilt such and such down my top. How do I get that out again? Or I'll call her and say, like, my mum is a trained chef and I'll say, I really want to make this cake. Could you send me a recipe?
Yeah.
And I think I'm supposed to do that for someone else.
Yeah.
And there was a moment and Margot wasn't very well. And my mum and dad happened to be at our house. They'd come over and Margot started feeling unwell. And she said she'd been sat with my mum. And then I came in the room and she went, I just want mummy. And I looked at her and thought, what do you want me for? She's the one that knows what she's doing. And it like blew my mind because to me, when I'm worried, I'm looking at my mum and I was like, I'm that person for you. And it was like lovely, but also frightening. And I was thinking, just go to grandma. She fixes it.
But that is really important. It's a thing that actually in the world we live in now, we don't have as much because when people say it takes a village, it literally does.
Yeah.
Having your parents, my mum, my siblings at our disposal, even though they're, different parts of the country, it's so important. And I think so many, particularly mothers, feel the pressure to not ask for help.
That is something that I would say I have learnt now to really not care. To just
do you think
ask
you did
for help
at the start? Did you feel like you wanted to?
Yeah, and also, like Jim touched on before, his mum did everything on her own.
Yeah.
Like, what a superwoman. And even my mum was on her own and my dad worked away. So I used to think, are they thinking less of me if I ask for help? And if you flip it and think, actually, they just want to spend time with their grandchildren. And what's the worst they can do is they can say no. And every time Jim goes away for work, his mum, bless her, always texts me and she goes, are you okay? Are you okay? Do you need me to come up? I'm like, it's fine, Judy, I've got it. But it's really lovely to know that I could. And I used to not want to because I was nervous because I thought these 2 women did it all by themselves.
The guilt and the pressure that we put on ourselves.
It's wild.
It's so detrimental, actually.
I think also that not just the guilt and the pressure that parents put on themselves, because I feel it too as a dad, and I imagine it's kind of a modicum compared to a lot of the mum guilt because that's what the media portrays. But even the way things are sold to you, it's really predatory. Like, do you remember when we were pregnant? You were pregnant with Margot, and we went to go and buy her pushchair.
I came out of John Lewis and just cried because I said to Jim, what if I get the wrong thing and she dies?
Yeah, if you don't get this
because you're
car seat,
looking
then
at
that's
all
gonna
these
happen.
car seats and it's like, well, this one offers this shock absorbent thing and then this one offers this. And I was like, what if we get the wrong thing? And I felt so overwhelmed by the pressure to get it right. And I said to my friend this morning who was messaging me saying, I'm so worried and what if I'm doing it wrong? And I said to her, you're not. You're doing a brilliant job. And the fact that you're worried that you think you're doing it wrong says you're doing a good job because you're worried about it. But also, you're surviving the day with a happy, healthy baby and you're happy and healthy and your husband's happy and healthy. So who cares if you're doing it differently to me?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that I chose to put my child on formula by that point. you're still breastfeeding, it does not matter. Your son is thriving and my son's thriving. So you keep doing you and enjoy your journey, and you are a good mum. And sometimes I think it's really nice to just tell someone, you're a really good mum.
Yeah.
It's a really nice thing to hear. Sometimes I just tell my friends, you're a really good mum.
Aww.
We forget it sometimes, and Jim sometimes just tells me out of the blue, he'll go, you're a really good mum. Like this morning when Margot was having a meltdown, he came back and he said, you dealt with that really well. You're a really good mum. And it's such a nice, I don't even know if you realise that meant something to me, but it's really nice to just hear, because it's a lot and we're all questioning ourselves constantly, thinking, should I raise them this way? Should I discipline this way? And to just have someone say, you did that well, is really nice.
I love moments like that. I love moments where, say, someone's struggling with their child in a train station.
Right.
I like the idea of people going over and going, you've got this. It's happened to me before. I love, the squeeze of a shoulder to kind of go, you've got... We can't ignore the fact that moments are tough.
Right, yeah.
But it's having people go, just that silent thing of kind of going, you've got this, and I see it.
Yeah, I mean, there have been times where I've been in the park where I'll only do it if I've got my kid with me, because it kind of gives it a bit of context, rather than having a 6'3" dude come up to you.
What do you want?
But if I see, there's been times where I've seen another parent who's got two of them, for example, and has got one in their arms and the other one's sort of hanging off the swings or something. I'll be like, do you need a hand? Are you good? Because it as a parent, you kind of have that sort of, especially if you're in the context of being in the park with a bunch of other kids, you sort of have almost like a bond to permission to approach and be like, you good? Because there have been times when I've been with Jessie and Margot's been that kid that's hanging off the swing. Yep. And I'm like, I don't know, which one do I like more? I've got to pick. And having another mum or dad come up to me and go, do you want me to just grab your child for you? Would be super helpful and handy. And actually where we live, what I will say, although it's very boring, there is a community. Like it's kind of like suburban London. So people move out for the very reason of having kids.
There's such a lovely family community. I was at the park a while ago and there was another child who wasn't very nice to Margot on the swings. And some parents afterwards saw what had happened and they made such a fuss of her to like calm her down. And they got their son to come over who's a bit older and was like, look at this little girl's wellies. Oh my gosh, don't you love them? Do you want to play with her? And like distracted her. And I thought, oh, that's so kind, and that's such a small insignificant thing to them, but it made such a difference to like how the rest of our day played out.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, if you could write a letter on parenthood, who would it be to? What would you say?
I would write to future mums. Of my friendship group, I was one of the earliest to have children, so a lot of my friends now will often ask me things or say, what do you think about this? And I would write a letter to future mums of things that I've learned, and my biggest one would be about mum guilt, and you just be you and get to the end of the day and look and think, am I happy in that decision that I made? And if I'm happy in it, if I'm comfortable in it, is my child safe? Are they healthy? Are they happy? Then hold steady in what you do, because there's going to be so many different things that you'll question. It's funny, the other day I was saying to Jim, I was like, I dress different now. Because after Margot, I was like, I'm a mum, but I don't know what my body is and what do I wear? And now, I don't know why, but recently I've thought, this is how I want to wear, and it is different. And I've had people on social media comment and be like, why are you dressing like that now? Because I want to. I kind of had to go back to the advice I give myself that says, my kids are okay. I'm still a mum. I'm still a good mum, but I'm also 30-year-old Sarah and I like this top. So this is what I'm wearing and I'm just going to own it. And that would be the kind of message I would give, to say, hold steady in those choices, because there's going to be someone that will criticize you, and maybe it'll be a stranger. Maybe it will even be a partner, a mother-in-law. But if you feel like what you've done is right for you, right for your family, and most importantly, happy, healthy, safe, you're good.
Yeah.
I bought you some time there, Jim.
Yeah, thank you. This maybe going to sound really heavy, and I don't mean it to, but everybody who is important to me and is important to the kids is already in their life. So I might write mine to my my stepdad who passed away, because he's missed it, and he was such a wonderful man. I thought about maybe writing it to my dad, but he left. He didn't want to be there. He was forcibly removed. Like he doesn't have any right to any of it. Brian, though, who we lost in like 2017, I think it was, he spent time with my sister's kids, loved them, like he was really good granddad. And and it's a shame that he never met mine.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to write him something, to be like, just so you know, like this is what you're missing,
Yeah.
But he's a good dude.
Yeah.
Miss him.
I think that's a really special thing as well, that sometimes our biological parents might let us down, but there are other figures that come in, other people that come in that might take over those roles or be a version of that role that equally brings
I think
much.
for me, because Brian came into our life sort of a bit, I was like 15, 16, so he never tried to be my dad.
Yeah.
But he was a terrific partner to my mum, and he was a member. It's a really odd role that he feels, because he's a member of the family through and through.
Yeah.
But not a brother, not a father, not a sibling. Just Brian, But he was integral, and he was joyful, and more so that actually us Chapmans have the tendency to verge on misery. Right?
Can confirm, yes.
And Brian was just very. Brian and your dad would get on really well. I think, because Brian was also very relaxed about.
Would he have been playing Bryan Adams, cooking a lasagna?
No, he wouldn't. No, he would have been asking us loads of really boring questions. But he lived for the kids.
Yeah.
He just loved having a house full. And it's such a shame that he has missed all this, because it's brilliant.
On the topic of Brian, I love that he came into your mum's life when you kids had grown up as well. It's
Yeah.
like your need of her had kind of changed so dramatically. It was now her time.
Yeah, well, it was lovely actually, and we bonded playing video games and things. Like Brian had really weird. This is kind of before the online gaming was like a real thing. So he had a bunch of PCs he used to make, and he'd have his friends over, get a few beers, and they'd all be connected via like a wire. So we'd play games like on our own screen. But he invited us along with all of his mates. So my brother and I were playing with a bunch of like 40-something-year-olds. But like he never thought anything of it. He came, met my mum, fell madly in love, happened to inherit a family, and he
took it in his stride.
He absolutely did. Yeah, he loved it. He embraced it. Whereas a lot of people meeting a single mum with two 16-year-old twin boys, and then Sam would have been 26 at the time.
Yeah.
There's a lot to take on.
Yeah.
And he just was like, okay, cool. Yeah.
I love that.
He went too soon, unfortunately.
We end the podcast with you completing 3 sentences. So the first one is being a mum or dad means.
I don't know. I think it means, to me, I don't want to say everything and be like really like.
Do you know, that's really funny. That was the word that popped into my head.
Because it doesn't either. Like, I still exist as an individual. I still have a job and a life, and it's really important. But it means it's responsibility, I think, but like in the most like beautiful way. I get to take these kids on a journey, and then they'll outlive me and they'll carry on that. It's a huge like an achievement to make people who are happy little go-getters.
Yeah.
Like I want them just to. I'm quite good at like taking life by the horns, and I say yes to adventure, and I do stuff, and I want them to do it. I don't care what they achieve. I don't care who they are. I want them just to like love existing, because it's
Jim,
brilliant.
we're so in sync. My thought was exactly the same as you, although not quite as many words, but that was exactly.
Go on. It was only one sentence.
I also thought everything that was the first word that came into my head, and then I thought the same. It was about being a mum is taking 2 people on a journey and experiencing life again.
Yeah.
You're experiencing life again, but through someone else's eyes. It's really magical.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is what you were trying to say.
Yeah, probably much more eloquently.
Since having a child, since having children, I
appreciate my husband more.
Oh.
There you go. Shout out. Genuinely, we're talking at the start about how we like to have our own space, but also, oh my goodness, you need support, and it's the little things that you don't really see when you're living life and just getting on. Things that like Jim tends to do the laundry. That was always his kind of thing. And things that once you've got kids and there's a lot more laundry, you really appreciate it. And I think when you're just living your life as a couple, there are lots of things that just happen that the other person just does. He fixes things, or there are lots of jobs that I wouldn't even really notice. And now you've got that whole never-ending list of parenthood stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'd be stuck without you. Or just the support and the love and someone else there, you realise like, oh gosh, thanks.
I can't just replicate Sarah's answer, obviously.
I know. What are you going to say to that now? That's really...
Thank you. Obviously,
say something nice
it's
about me, Jim.
reciprocated. But I think since being a parent, I've realised the value of time.
Yeah.
My time for me, but also my time with the kids and for like everything. Suddenly, 24 hours isn't enough.
And I'm happy when?
Isn't there a saying, is that I'm only ever as happy as my least happy child? Yeah. Does everyone say that?
No.
Right.
It's come up once, actually. Judy Finnegan of Richard and Julie,
Right.
she said it, but that was during COVID, so we've not had that. And she mentioned it in the chats, but I truly believe that.
Yeah, I mean...
I think because ours have been so sick, sorry to interrupt you there, I think for us that's probably quite rings true because we haven't really chatted about it on this podcast, but our kids have been very, very poorly in and out of hospital the last 2 years. And for us, I think you really
had something
are...
like 10 hospital trips.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Jesse with his tummy, Margot with her lungs, like it's been a lot. So actually it was only a few days ago, I was like, oh my God, no one's sick. And then I've been really sick because I had glandular fever and I had my tonsils out, and the house, like the air's been green. So I think I said to you like 2 days ago, oh my God, don't do anything.
Don't move a muscle. But you're only as happy as your least happy child.
Yeah.
Guys, I have to stop this now. We have to say goodbye. But thank you. I feel like we could have literally spoken for hours longer.
Longest episode ever.
No, I've loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
I hope you've got a very slow journey home.
Might get a coffee, huh?
I was actually going to suggest lunch, but if you only want a coffee, Jim.
We just cruise back.
It's got places to be.
Such is life.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.